Despite being shuffled in the pack late in the going last week, Denny Hamlin's heroics over the final 14 laps earned him an emotional 60th Career Cup Series victory and solidified his spot in the championship race at Phoenix next month. Today, 7 drivers walk into the state of Alabama to face their biggest and baddest test of all, Talladega Superspeedway. A 2.66-mile behemoth, cars used to go so fast here that it played host to the sport's first 200-mile-per-hour lap when Buddy Baker shrieked around the Alabama high banks all the way back in 1970. And 17 years later, Bill Elliott set a NASCAR record by running a lap where he averaged over 212 miles per hour. Through many years and awful crashes, NASCAR decided to restrict the engines at these facilities, which ultimately kept the entire field together at once in the pack. Where you are in the pack could determine your fate today. Riding in the back to avoid the big one could leave you without enough time to rebound at the end. Blocking like your life depends on it at the front of the field could see you turned around facing nearly 40 cars stampeding toward you. Worst of all, you could be stuck somewhere in between with nowhere to go. The in-between is where you're most liable to get caught up in somebody else's mess due to the cars only being an arm's length apart on all sides. Though Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, and Chase Briscoe remain above the cut line going into today's race, Talladega is known for shuffling the championship deck even more so than Las Vegas, meaning everyone is vulnerable until the checkered flag flies. Are William Byron and Chase Elliott able to rebound from the odds beating them in Vegas? Are Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney poised to return to championship form in the nick of time? Or will a wild card come through in the final moments to score a much-needed win? Find out today at the YellaWood 500 at Talladega.
Thank you so much, Tanner Smith, editor of the Pitbox Press. I'm Joe Samaniego. With me is also Matthew Bro from GridNetworkTV.com. A big thank you to our Patreon investors calling the show, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, and our newest member, Crystal, for investing in the Grid Network. Link in the video description to invest in the Grid Network through the Patreon website. You can also do a YouTube super chat if you're watching us live on YouTube. Buy me a coffee, link in the video description, and across social media, Grid Network TV, at Grid Network TV. Be sure to follow the Grid Endurance Performance Index, the Grid Ranking, and pick a winner, which we'll get to later in the episode. And of course, scan the QR code. You can also invest through the Grid Network that way. Now, gentlemen, the YellaWood 500, this is the biggest wildcard race of the round, which is quite wild in itself. Martinsville next race weekend. Last weekend, we saw how Las Vegas could be really tripping up drivers and their playoff hopes. I am just thrilled that we're going to be here at Talladega to see what's going to happen. We know it's going to be somewhere in the playoffs. And this spot, very intense for a lot of drivers, especially drivers like William Byron, who last race weekend had what looked like to be a good day going until he got caught up in that crash. Not exactly in a must-win situation, as you see 15 points below the cut line, 15 positions, or if you think of it this way, one stage win, you cut it down to 5 points below the cut line, depending on where everyone else is. Byron, last 10 races here at Talladega, average finish 9.1, the best average finish. But there's been 15 times he's raced here. He has in total 5 top 5, 7 top 10s, no wins or poles yet at Talladega. He has led 119 laps here at Talladega and has finished all but 3 of the 15 races. So Tanner, considering next weekend's Martinsville, which the last 2 years it seems like that's been like a weak race for him when it comes to the playoffs this time of the year, is William Byron, is that team treating this race as a make or break, but not exactly a must win? Mainly, they need to have a good day.
So I think it's important to remember that William Byron does have 2 spring victories at Martinsville in 2022 and 2024, both in the next-gen era. So anything that happens this week could be, relatively arbitrary for the 24 team in terms of they could go out to Martinsville and compete for the victory and ultimately punch their ticket to the championship round for the 3rd straight year that way. However, it seems that the fall race, as Joe so eloquently put it, seems to be where William tends to fall apart, so to speak. Both of the last two fall events there, he has not quite put up, anything worthy of note in terms of performance. And because of that, you don't really have a whole lot of confidence in that 24 team to really rebound, especially given the higher tension that's going to come today. With that said, I do think that the 24 team being 15 points below the cut line is in desperate need of a good finish. And by that, I mean they need to finish the race. Not only that, I also think that they should be trying to get some points if at all possible, because I do think that Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano are going to be up there with Austin Cindric and probably Josh Berry trying to control the race, maybe even with the FRM cars, because they also have a Penske affiliation. So that's 7 Team Penske associated vehicles that could pretty much dictate this entire race, as we saw SHR do back in the 2018 fall event. With all that said, I think that the 24 team could use, their own alliances to their advantage. I mean, you have 4 cars in your own stable, plus Hayek Motorsports has some form of alliance with them, as well as Spire Motorsports and their 3 cars. So that's 8. So with that in mind, you would think that if William Byron found himself in a spot, he would have plenty of teammates or plenty of aligned cars to help him get back up toward the front. But as we've kind of seen in the next gen era at Talladega, you can really only get 2 lines going. That said, I do wonder if how Ryan Blaney was able to take over that race at Daytona in the summer. I wonder if we're going to be able to see a third line develop here, because I think what makes the third line develop at Daytona is that it has a slightly, shortened groove in the corners. So at Talladega, you can see them go easily 4 wide without really any trouble. So I am a little concerned that the racing product today will, again, not be terribly exciting, but as for the 24 team, I do think this is a make or break race for them. And I really don't think you want to go up against Ryan Blaney at Martinsville needing a win, because as we've seen with Denny Hamlin in the past 2 years, it doesn't quite pan out for you.
Yeah, and especially a track like this for Hendrick Motorsports. I mean, you look at the 4 drivers in the field that have the lowest average finish in the next gen era at Talladega, and all 4 of them are Hendrick Motorsports drivers: William Byron, Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, and Kyle Larson. So clearly, whether it's Chase Elliott needing to get the points or William Byron needing to get the points, nobody really does score more points. Even this year, looking at the Superspeedway stats, Kyle Larson has the most amount of points on Super Speedways this year, followed by Chase Elliott, followed by Tyler Reddick, funny enough, and then William Byron has the 4th most points. So nobody does it better than, I guess, besides Tyler Reddick, right? But nobody does it better than getting points, much needed points at these style of tracks in the next gen era than Hendrick Motorsports. So if you are William Byron, you are the best in the sport at this track without a win. Just like Denny Hamlin in the next gen era was the best at Vegas without a win, and he got it done. So it wouldn't shock me if Byron went out and won this race, but at the same time, he's probably going to go points racing because Hendrick just does a really great job at that, especially at Talladega. But like Tanner had mentioned, I wouldn't want to have to face Ryan Blaney in a must-win situation at Martinsville. I think he'll win that race anyway, so he'll be fine. But I wouldn't want to have to deal with that. So if you're Byron, probably try to go out and get as many points as possible, because you can score 50-something points and not win. We've seen that with Kyle Larson multiple times in this playoffs. Hasn't won, but he's gotten enough points to where he is really 35 points above the cut line. So unless something drastic happens to Kyle Larson, he will advance. But then you got to look at guys like Christopher Bell too, guys who are just a little bit above the cut line, who William Byron needs to have a good day compared to them. So I wouldn't say treat it as a make or break or treat it as a must win, but go points racing. And when the 24 team needs the points race, they usually do a good job unless they run into a lapped car off the pace coming to pit road at Las Vegas. Usually they do pretty fine. So I'm confident in William Byron. I know his Martinsville performance isn't doesn't do as well in the fall as the spring. Obviously, he's won there twice in the next gen era. But, yeah, I think Talladega, this is his best track without a win in the next gen era. So I think he can go get it done. But at the same time, is it worth trying to wreck yourself to get it done? So I think Rudy Fuller, they'll be fine. They'll figure it out. So, yeah, that's what I got.
It'll be very interesting to see how William Byron approaches this race. I don't think it's going to be exactly towards the back, but I think he will be trying to get the stage points. But same time, just racing carefully. I don't anticipate a whole lot of action really in the first two stages, especially if we get into the few mileage. So that could be a good opportunity for him to just close in the gap that he has in the playoffs. In the chat room, good morning, Denver. Good day. How are you going to give the Talladega is going somewhat of a demo derby at the end? Who is in the playoffs is smart enough to stay out of the lunatic party?
The lunatic party. That's pretty good.
We've seen how this race can just at times go off the wall crazy. I remember the year, I believe it was when Chris Buescher went end over in that front row motorsport. That race particular stands out because it just seemed from start to finish, it was just a caution, a caution, a caution, a caution compared to the last couple of years where fuel saving, and then we get to that third station. That's where the mayhem starts up. And of course, with the playoff drivers, when you look at where they are right now, coming into Talladega, William Byron, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Chase Briscoe, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, and Joey Logano. Reason why I said it in that order, from William Byron, last 10 races, the best average finish, to Joey Logano, one of the worst. We all know Kyle Larson has bad luck at these tracks, it seems. Here, Daytona, you could add in now Atlanta. Christopher Bell, average finish in the last 10 races here, 20.1. Joey Logano at the bottom, 27.2. Most of all the playoff drivers. So, Matt, if you're looking at those three drivers, Logano, Bell, Larson, which of those three do you believe have the best shot at getting a win at Talladega?
I think that's a tougher question than it needs to be. And just hear me out. This is why I feel this way. Is because it's like, who has the most teammate support when you think about it, right? Like Blaney, I don't know if Blaney was really going to try to push Logano in that sense, but he does have like a Josh Berry and an Austin Cindric. But then Christopher Bell, you have Denny Hamlin, but then you're fighting against Chase Briscoe, and then you have Ty Gibbs as your other teammate. So, yeah. And then Kyle Larson, too, you have William Byron and Chase Elliott trying to get in there. And Kyle Larson has enough insurance at this current moment in time. So I'm actually going, I never thought I would say this in my entire life, but I think Kyle Larson has the best chance of winning this race. Never thought I would say that. He hasn't done it ever. Never won on a super speedway. It's like the only type of track that he hasn't been able to do it. But if you look, he was second here in the spring. He has the most points scored on super speedways. He, no matter what, he goes stage racing, he gets the points, and he still avoids the chaos lately. I mean, it's hard to, I never really thought, I know we were giggling here, but I really never would have thought I would say I think Kyle Larson has a legitimate shot to win on a super speedway. But I think he does. You have the 400th start. I think if you are Kyle Larson, you get enough stage points in stage 1 and stage 2, and you're looking at plus 50-something, go and try to win the race. It's not going to hurt as much as if something happens to you versus someone who might be hanging, like Denver said, who's going to avoid, stay back, and try to just be there at the end. Maybe Denny Hamlin does that because he doesn't really need any more points. He kind of just needs to show up to the track these next couple weeks and be ready for Phoenix. So I would say Kyle Larson, just based on, obviously he has the 4th best average finish here in the next gen era. He has the most points scored on super speedways. And I feel like he is in the safest spot among those other guys to get it done in terms of his insurance. Like Logano's got to probably win either here or at Martinsville. Christopher Bell is above the cut line, but he's got a hungry Chase Briscoe, his teammate, right there too. And then Larson just has a big enough gap between him and Chase Elliott and him and William Byron. So, yeah, it's weird to say that, but I think Kyle Larson has the best chance of winning. But until he wrecks on lap 4, that's probably what will happen. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things right. I'm not saying he's winning. I'm not going to pick him to win this event. But I think of those 3, he has the best chance of winning.
Matthew, I really appreciate you laying out that case, but I am going to wholeheartedly disagree. I think it's a very easy answer that got overcomplicated. It's Joey Logano. The guy is going to do any and everything he possibly can to go out there and try to win this race today. Because, again, you don't want to have to face Ryan Blaney at Martinsville with the chips on the line. Like, you absolutely do not want to do that, especially if you're one of his teammates, because at Martinsville, Ryan Blaney turns into a completely different guy. Most tracks, he'll just hop on the radio and complain a little bit and, push the hot air out so it can propel him forward. At Martinsville, he will just straight up plow into you in the middle of the corner and move you out of the way. The dude becomes a demon when he gets to that track, and it's very entertaining to watch. With that said, Joey Logano does not want to face that version of Ryan Blaney next week, and Roger Penske doesn't want to see Joey Logano face that version of Ryan Blaney next week. So, with that in mind, I'm not even considering Christopher Bell or Kyle Larson for this victory today, and I have no shame in it. Those guys, Larson has no plate victories at all, so why should I believe that today is going to be the start of a new era where Kyle Larson's winning those kinds of races? And Christopher Bell, as good as he is at these kinds of tracks, I mean, in the spring, he got a slightly bad bump coming out of turn 2 and completely ended his day on, lap 58. So, I can't really trust him too much either. So, with all that said, Joey Logano, to me, is easily the top of these 3. He has won this race before, at least once. No, he's done it twice. He's done it twice now, I think. And I just have a feeling that of those 3, he's got the best chance. But, obviously a lot of this isn't really within your control. But I think the driver that has the best chance of staying up front is the one that's going to have the best chance at the end. And I'm inclined to believe that's Joey Logano.
On my end, just to add a fun stat, reason why I didn't choose Logano as well is luck. If you look at, there have been 53 drivers to race a next-gen race at Talladega. Only about 30-something of them have competed in all 7 races. Nobody has a worse average finish of the ones who have competed in all 7 than Joey Logano. BJ McLeod has a better average finish at Talladega in the next-gen era in the same 7 races than Joey Logano. So Logano sits 47th out of 53rd. And the reason why I don't disagree with your point, though, is just because it's luck. A lot of it is just luck, and Joey Logano sometimes just doesn't have the luck. But obviously he's won 2 championships in this little span in the next-gen era, too. So clearly it doesn't matter how he does here, because if he finds a way to that Phoenix race, he gets it done. So I thought that was kind of funny to think Logano, 29.1 average finish in the next-gen era at Talladega. Nobody worse who has done every single race here. Only worse than him are Hemrick, Brennan Poole, Allgaier, Harrison Burton, John Hunter Nemechek, and Greg Biffle. So that's a fun group of people.
Biffle.
Right? Yeah, when Greg Biffle, I think it was the 44 New York racing car. Remember, he did that. Was that 22? He did a few races with them. That's fun. I don't disagree, though, with Tanner. I think he makes a lot of great points there. I just wanted to throw that fun fact out. Because last time I did that about Bristol and Logano, he finished 5th when I was crapping on him for being bad. So that's what's going to happen today.
I just think that the key thing is that Austin Cindric is no longer a competitor with Logano in these playoffs, and he is by far the best plate racer in the sport right now. So having him be an assist for both Blaney and for Logano today, I just think that, compared to last year where honestly Cindric and Logano drafting kind of ended up being their unraveling, I don't think that that'll be necessarily the case this year, given that Cindric is not trying to make the next round. He is no longer in the playoffs. So I just have a feeling that having that guy on your side, probably the best in the sport at this kind of stuff, is certainly going to help.
100%.
What a statement that would be to see Austin Cindric potentially help one of his Penske teammates out to get that win. It'll be very interesting. You have a scenario where it was the two of them up front, and Austin Cindric had to choose one to push. I think he'll be thinking the big picture, and he'd probably go with Logano and hope that Blaney gets it done next race weekend. In the chat room, Denver, Denny Hamlin has it easy. He could just retire his car after the second stage to avoid the carnage. I mean, heck, it doesn't matter if he gets stage points or playoff points at this point because you get no advantage going to the next round. He could park the car after lap 2 and just say, oh, mechanical issue, we're done. So I don't think he would. I think he would love to get win number 61. And I think he might be a little bit more dangerous because he would just go out there for the win. Now, while Denny Hamlin, all the playoff drivers are going to be going for that win, so too will be the non-playoff drivers. And one of the big things, a non-playoff driver that first stands out because he's starting out first, Michael McDowell claimed the pole. You look at that top 10, 7 drivers in the top 10 are not in the playoffs. 4 of them have yet to win this season or in their career. That's Michael McDowell, Kyle Busch, Ryan Preece, and Riley Herbst, a surprise top 10 start. Outside the top 10, drivers winless this year include Alex Bowman, looking for his first win, Chris Buescher, Tyler Reddick, Brad Keselowski, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who got this race win last year at Talladega. They all want to get their first win of 2025. Tanner, which non-playoff driver are you looking at as a potential winner?
I'm not going to say one of them deliberately because it'll ruin my pick a winner later, and I like to keep that a bit of a surprise. But I think that obviously the 2311 cars are very stout at these kinds of tracks, and I think that's because of the people behind the wheel. Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick both have wins at this hallowed facility, and I think that they should definitely be considered front runners for the win today, assuming they can keep themselves clean throughout this race. Not only that, Riley Herbst has a pretty solid record at these kinds of tracks in the past. Granted, it was in a Ford before, but at the same time, you've still got to, accept that it was a Cup Series top 10 that the guy was able to earn. And granted, that hasn't been something he's been able to really accomplish much this year, but hey, there's a new time, there's a first time for everything. I know I did just, contradict myself with Kyle Larson not winning a super speedway and saying that about Riley Herbst, but I think we could all agree that getting a top 10 at Talladega is far easier than getting the win. With that said, some other drivers that I'll be pinpointing today, you've obviously got to look at the RFK cars. You got Brad Keselowski, who is, I believe, the winningest current super speedway racer in the sport. Granted, doesn't have any in this era, but he clearly has the strength to win these kinds of races. He just hasn't for whatever reason. In addition, you've got Chris Buescher, who granted hasn't won at this track before, but he has won at Daytona and has shown a lot of muscle at these kinds of tracks. And Ryan Preece, who granted has a bit more of a highlight tape concerning his wrecks at these kinds of tracks, but he does tend to have a lot of speed at these kinds of facilities as well. And if he can just keep all 4 of his wheels on the ground, he tends to be in good shape. Not only that, I think the FRM cars have a solid shot today. You've got Todd Gilliland, who is, in the midst of one of the worst seasons of his career. A win would mean so much for him. Zane Smith been on the precipice of many good runs this year that have gotten whisked away at the last second. So a win today would be very, helpful for him. And then Noah Gragson, who, he said it himself. He's a 71 overall in the new NASCAR game, and that means he is butt cheeks. So a win today would certainly propel him forward in his career. So those are the drivers I'm looking at. Outside of that, Legacy Motor Club's Eric Jones might have a good shot today, but, I haven't really seen a terrible amount from them at these super speedways later in the season as I did at the beginning of the year. So I don't really know how much confidence I have in them compared to what I would have had in the spring race. But those would be my picks. And like I said, my pick a winner later is one of these kinds of drivers.
Yeah, I know there's one you didn't mention, so I'm not going to talk directly about that guy because I think I know who it is. But I look at that list. I don't see a scenario where I think all of them could realistically win. And I think that's just the way Talladega is. There's 40 drivers in this race, and I would say 37 of them can probably win. No offense to Casey Mears and stuff like that, but I don't know if he's going to bring that car to victory lane. It would be the funniest thing ever imaginable if Casey Mears would win. But I think, Casey Mears is in this race. I'm not hallucinating, right? Yeah, okay. But yeah, Riley Herbst is a funny one because if Riley Herbst locks in his front row top 10 debut superspeedway race in the NASCAR Cup Series many years ago, it feels like at this point, he could have a good day. Like you said, 2311 has won here with two different drivers in two different styles of cars. So hey, maybe Riley Herbst could be a third. But if you told me before the year that Alex Bowman, Chris Buescher, and Tyler Reddick would not have a win yet going into this race, I would have called you absurd. Because the fact that those three drivers, who I believe have all won on super speedways, or at least Alex Bowman has come pretty damn close, if I'm not mistaken. The fact that none of them have won yet this year is absurd. So I think any one of those guys can. Obviously, Kyle Busch, very good betting odds here, one of the best. He needs a win, I think, for his own sake, for everyone else's sake, too. It would be pretty cool. Was Talladega his last win 2 years ago? Or was it?
It was Gateway.
Gateway, thank you. Because Talladega's when Bubba threw a block on Blaney, right? And then Busch got around. Okay, thank you.
There was a caution on the last lap, and Kyle was ahead, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that'd be cool if Kyle Busch could run it back, obviously. He's one of the few that have won here in the next-gen era. But Brad Keselowski has great odds. But even you look at guys, too, like Eric Jones, like you had mentioned, very good super speedway racer at Talladega for some reason in the next-gen era. Did really well at Daytona. Todd Gilliland always seems to have no luck at all. He'll lead a bunch of laps and then something falls apart. So those front row guys you mentioned, Zane Smith seems to be hit or miss at these tracks. Noah Gragson was in the top 5 earlier this year at this track, so he needs one of those type of legacy performances. I feel like he's getting a little worried and anxious that his Xfinity success hasn't really translated to the Cup level. Then even Cole Custer, another guy who doesn't matter where he starts, it feels like at a super speedway you don't know what can happen. And then a lot of guys, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I could name literally the whole roster except maybe someone like Casey Mears I'm not too confident in. Maybe I don't know about Anthony Alfredo. I don't know how he's going to do. And then, honestly, Austin Hill probably could have a good day. I know he doesn't do well in Cup at super speedways, but if he has a Kyle Busch in front of him, that would be a pretty fun way to get that win for Kyle Busch if Austin Hill could magically be up front and get it done. But, yeah, I'm looking at about 37, 36 guys, Joe, who I think can win this race total, and all of the winless ones except maybe the 66 team, which would be awesome, though. Wishing him the best. But
it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out in the chat room. Scott Lynch, I assume, say Zane Smith. Zane Smith has had a few good runs here and there throughout the year. It'd just be very interesting to see how this all plays up because this race is just so unpredictable. Right place, right time. You avoid the big one. Next thing you know, you're contending for the win. But a person getting a better push, or you thinking, I'll get a push by this person, and they just go the other lane. You fall to the back like a brick sinking. So much of it has to be luck. So much has to be perfect timing and trust. If the drivers behind you don't trust you to bring them to the front, they're going to go around you. It'll be very, very good race to watch and see how, unfortunately, I think mostly Stage 3 will see this action. Stage 1 and 2 might be fuel-saving mode. Hopefully we're wrong. Let's see how it goes. One team, none of the drivers are in the playoffs. Trackhouse Racing, of course, Chastain has won here. Dan Suarez has had good runs here. He'll love to try to get one more win before leaving. And SVG has led laps here. Last night, at about 1 a.m. Eastern, Trackhouse Racing earned their first MotoGP Grand Prix win. Raul Fernandez won the MotoGP Australian Grand Prix It's first of his career and first for Trackhouse, which uses Aprilia bikes. We'll have more on Grid Life wrap up. But this is only their second season in MotoGP. So they got to win a MotoGP. They clearly won in NASCAR already. Tanner, what are the chances of a weekend sweep for Trackhouse with MotoGP and NASCAR today?
I'd say they're decently high for Talladega standards. I mean, you have two guys, one in Ross, who has won at this track, and another in Daniel Suarez, who has had many chances actually to win at this track, even going as far back as his rookie season in 2017 when he was actually leading the race with, I want to say, about 7 laps to go when he, Kyle Larson, and Chase Elliott all tangled at the top 3 and took each other out of the event. So we could have been talking about Daniel Suarez, a winner for JGR as far back as his rookie season. I think people often forget that. With that said, he also has that win at Atlanta in spectacular fashion from last season and has put up a number of strong performances there, including, I believe, 2 runner-up finishes and multiple top 5s. And in addition to that, he's been in the mix at Daytona in the past as well, just kind of like Matt mentioned earlier, has just terrible luck at the end, or in the case of last year's fall race, kind of makes his own terrible luck, or his team gives him terrible luck. So, you know, with the playoffs not really being a factor in him leaving Trackhouse for another Chevy team, possibly for next year, and that's as deep as I'm going to get into it for that. I think that, you know, Trackhouse certainly has a very strong roster that could contend at this kind of track. SVG, I don't think, has quite figured this kind of racing out just yet. I know he got that like 3rd place at Atlanta in the Xfinity Series last year, but that had more to do with fuel strategy than anything else, and I think people kind of overinflated that result. But with all that said, I think the Trackhouse very well could pull off, you know, a win today, but I'd say they have the same 1 in 40 shot that practically everybody else has.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think Ross Chastain's great here. I think Daniel Suarez is inspired to do a good job here. Wink, wink. But in terms of like SVG too, I don't really see much out of him, except it would be pretty funny. I think if SVG can come out and get a top 10, that'd be great. But I don't, no offense to Track. I think it's awesome that Trackhouse is now winning in MotoGP. It shows just some random idea that like Justin Marks had 5-6 years ago. It has become just this, and he's winning races. Obviously, you have Connor Zilic in your program. You have one of the best supercars racers of all time in your program, who has 6 Cup wins now. It's like, holy hell! It's like they've done a lot, and it sucks that someone like Suarez, who was the main reason why this team initially was created, he was their founding kind of driver. Now he's obviously on his way out, but I think he has a chance, just like Tanner had mentioned. He has a chance. Chastain has a chance. SVG has a chance. Are they going to survive the race? Like, I mean, just in terms of the car, obviously. Like, just are you going to make it through these cautions? I hope that there are not. That this stupid fuel mileage stuff makes me hate super speedways. I wish there was a way they could legitimately figure it out. I know they mentioned adding another stage. That'd be stupid as hell. But if they could like figure out a way to where these teams can't like just ride around like that, I think it would be awesome. But until then, I'm not really a fan of like Talladega. I'm worried that this is just going to kind of be boring until the final laps of each stage, and then when everyone starts wrecking. Obviously, last year was like the biggest wreck in NASCAR Cup history or something on like in the modern era with like 28 cars or something like that. But yeah, there's a chance that they get it done. Obviously, Daniel Suarez would be an awesome victory, just his final way out of Trackhouse. Ross Chastain's won this season already, but he shows he can win literally everywhere. And then Shane Van Gisbergen, I think it would shut a lot of people up. Maybe not so much if he won somewhere other than a super speedway, but I think it would be pretty cool if he could somehow pull one out. But yeah, I'm not really. They do have a 3 out of 40 chance, right, to win. So I guess that's better odds than someone who only has 1 car in the field or 2 cars in the field. So Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, shout out to Fernandez though. That's pretty awesome. I was sleeping at 1 a.m. Eastern. I don't know about you two, but I was out. But yeah, that's awesome.
Being on the West Coast, it was only what 10 p.m. by the time we got that race done, so works out great. In the chat room, Adam, hi, I'm in my seats at Talladega. Fully enjoy. Pick a winner. Byron, SVG, top 15. He also predicts one red flag. The Xfinity Series, I believe it had 2 red flag periods, correct? Or just one?
I think 2.
I didn't really watch.
One was
Bad.
flag.
Not a problem. And then imagine SVG wins at Dega. What the fans will whinge about him. I mean,
I think it'd be cool.
I think it would be a big statement, and no
It'd
matter
be a
what
sixth win of the year.
6th win of the year, a rookie. I mean, he already has the record for most wins by a rookie. Say what you want to say. You know the fans of Talladega, they all want to catch that rugby ball when SVG kicks it into the crowd.
Are at Talladega though? Like, there's a huge.
That is a huge catch. So, and then SVG oval win, it could happen. Comment in the chat room. Is SVG your pick a winner? I'm really curious to see what people will do when they get to pick a winner. One team you already mentioned a little bit about, Tanner. Front Row Motorsport, of course, Zane Smith starting 23rd, Todd Gilliland 27th, Noah Gragson 36th. We've seen that team get wins here. Granted, sometimes it's been under races where it was a lot more chaotic, but still, win, especially David Reagan getting them the win. This team knows how to get it done. A lot of distractions this year because they're part of the lawsuit with 2311 NASCAR. But with no drivers starting the top 20, do you believe there'll be a factor at all today, Matt?
Yeah, I don't see why they couldn't be. And they'd be the second open car to win a race this season because they're obviously all still open. But I definitely see one of those 3 winning. I'm not going to say mainly just because it is Talladega, but Noah Gragson has shown he can run really well on super speedways. Todd Gilliland is usually up front until a bad push or someone else has a bad push in front of him that takes him out. And then Zane Smith is another guy who has a lot of talent, and I'm just waiting for him to, I guess, grow into it. Like, I think if you're a truck champion, a multiple-time top 2 finisher in the truck series, like standings, and to be able to get a cup opportunity and do really well, finish second a couple times, or at least one. I know he finished second at least once, but he's got the talent. So it would be really cool for him to like end up going back to Front Row after leaving them for a little bit, and then to get them their first cup win in a couple of years. Obviously, they have won before in the next gen era, but I think McDowell Superspeedway was before that. Yeah, okay. Now they've won in the last 5 years, I will say. But yeah, I think all of them could realistically finish inside the top 20. Especially because Noah Gragson, you could start 40th here as long as you're in the draft and you don't lose the draft immediately, you will be fine. Like, you just have to stay there and then make your way to the front. So I think absolutely all of them could be a factor. I'm not going to guarantee it, but I will say that it wouldn't shock me one bit if all of them were, like, say, a top 20 finisher, even though none of them start in the top 20. I'm not going to say any of them are going to win, but it would be pretty damn cool for all of their careers. Obviously, certain uncertainty, which we'll touch on. It's like, even if the team, I'm pretty sure they said that if they lose this charter lawsuit, the Cup team probably won't exist or will have to at least go down a lot. And I know they have a really talented truck series stable too, but they got guys like Lane Riggs ready to move up to the next level. They have Chandler Smith has the talent. It's just he hasn't done very well lately. He's kind of fallen off. But yeah, they got talent in that Front Row stable. It's just I feel like a lot of their talent was because they succeeded at different levels, and now they're up at like the top level. Like Gillen obviously won truck races. Gragson won a lot of Xfinity races. Zane Smith is a truck champion, but now they're at Cup, so it's been a learning curve for all of them. But I think they could all finish inside the top 20 at least today. But then again, they could also all be involved in a lap one accident that takes them all out. We don't know what's going to happen.
Indeed, we don't. as Joe mentioned, I did touch upon front row in an earlier segment, and I do think that their three drivers each have some form of prowess at these kinds of tracks for one reason or another. And as I mentioned in the previous segment where I did mention them, they do have a Penske affiliation. So in theory, they should be some of the stronger cars out there today. But at the same time, we just really have not seen them have any measure of performance this year, really at any facility other than Bristol, where they did have, Zane Smith competing for the win randomly at the end. But with all that said, I do think that front row, this is probably their best shot to win a race this year. And I'm sure that they know that going to any of the 6 super speedway style races. And I think that, someone like Todd Gilliland in particular, I think that he has the maturity and the skill to win one of these races. He just hasn't had the luck. And it would be very cool if Todd could take that very familiar number 34 car to victory lane for front row. But I do still think it's rather unlikely compared to some of the other teams we've mentioned earlier, especially considering that none of their drivers have a win yet at the Cup Series level. So with all that said, front row certainly have a very good shot today if they can get up front and keep their noses clean, but you could really say that about any of the 40 competitors in the field today.
I mean, 40 cars out there in the field today. The old saying by Larry McReynolds, if it cranks up, you got a shot at winning at Talladega. A silly season question for you both regarding front row. We know Todd Gilliland appears set to return in 2026. Zane Smith, his future is uncertain. We know the situation with them being an open team, the charter, doubtful, who knows. We'll see what happens. You look at Noah Gragson, 33rd in the points. The only full-time drivers behind him in the standings, Cole Cussert, Riley Herbst, Cody Ware. And actually, he is tied with Cole Cussert for 33rd place. So Riley Herbst, Cody Ware. Both of them, Cody Ware Motorsports, the equipment I feel a lot of people anticipate that's not going to be up there. At the end of the day, Gragson, he did sign a multi-year deal. But being outside the top 30, could he be dropped if he doesn't make something happen in Dega? Because I am doubtful he'll be a contender in Martinsville and at Phoenix. I'm just curious, do you all feel like this is something where if he doesn't make that top 30, he could be dropped and maybe replaced?
So, based on the sources that I haven't heard anything about Gragson possibly getting moved, though his performance has been certainly less than ideal this year. I think that the complications from the lawsuit sort of muddy the waters here. I think that Gragson certainly brings a significant amount of funding to that team. And in addition to that, he, clearly has a social media presence, for better or worse. And I think that with all that in mind, he brings a lot of value outside of the race car to the team. With all that said, if we were strictly going off of performance, I think it's kind of hard to put somebody in the seat, especially one that's being paid for by the driver. I think it's hard to put somebody in the seat that doesn't already have more funding that they're bringing with them. And I'm thinking of like the Ford pipeline right now. You have Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed in the Xfinity Series, who are both strong, but they're going to be Chevy drivers next year, assuming they stay with the Haas factory team. So they may not even be in the running to get that kind of a job. In addition to that, you look at some of the drivers in their truck series unit. I don't think Chandler Smith is ready for all that. Lane Riggs, I think that he is strong. I think that another year in the truck series would do him a lot of good, because there have been a lot of times this year where, he's kind of gotten swept up into other people's stuff, or straight up got taken out. I'm thinking specifically of the Roval, where he had to come back and fight his way back to the top 10 without a sway bar. Very impressive underscored performance. But obviously, Corey Haim kind of took that race over there at the end. So it became the Corey Haim story, as it often is. In addition to all that, I just think that the Ford program in general in NASCAR is lacking, so they don't really have a whole lot of bona fide candidates to really take that ride. I mean, I would obviously look at somebody like Ty Majeski would probably be very strong, but I don't think that he brings a whole lot of funding, to be completely frank. I don't think Soda Sense is paying for an entire Cup schedule. So I just think Noah Gragson being in that car probably through next year is indicative more of Ford's total pipeline and what they have to offer than it is, Noah's lack of performance. But his lack of performance, even compared to his teammates, is pretty glaring. And if it continues into next season, assuming that team still exists next season, I can't see him making it back for 2027 or maybe even staying in that car through the entirety of 2026.
Yeah, there's no other way to put it besides just Noah Gragson has just been poor this year. It's unfortunate for him because I honestly thought, especially coming from the JRM program, and then his first year at Haas obviously wasn't really the best either, but I just thought he would be doing a little bit better. And you look at the standings and you see, well, Todd Gilliland's 30th and Noah Gragson's 33rd, but there was 104 points between those two that far back in the standings. So that says kind of a lot about his performance this year. Obviously, we haven't heard anything about if he could be dropped. I think he brings good funding. I really think this is going to sound silly. There is going to come a time when Jesse Love is going to be in the Cup Series, which means that Richard Childress' number 2 car would be free in Xfinity. I feel like Noah Gragson would be a perfect candidate for a Richard Childress Xfinity car. I know it sounds silly, but I feel like he brings that social media attention, he brings that vibe, and he can win in Xfinity and good equipment, especially Chevrolet good equipment. So I think that would be something fun to watch. Obviously, haven't heard anything. I just pulled that one out of thin air. But I think that would be cool for him. But I think he'll finish it out, and I think he'll definitely be racing in Cup next year if Front Row and 2311 win this charter lawsuit. If they don't, I expect Gragson to be in Xfinity or trucks. Zane Smith, probably maybe a Cup team at most, but probably Xfinity or trucks again. Todd Gilliland, maybe he'll go back to Tricon and work his way back up. I know he'd have to leave Ford to go to Toyota, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see. But I don't see any changes happening because obviously, if someone like Justin Haley still has his ride for the rest of the year, and he's been a lot better than Gragson too. Obviously, we don't know where Haley's going. We know rumors of who's replacing Haley. Obviously, we joked about that earlier in the show. But yeah, I don't see Noah Gragson doing or leaving after this season unless something really drastic happens. So I think he'll be fine for another year. Hopefully he keeps getting his feet wet in this sport in the Cup level. He's come close to winning on super speedways before. And then even when he was in Alex Bowman's car a couple of years ago, he did pretty decent for someone who didn't have any Cup experience. Obviously, he's done Kaulig Cup races prior to this too. So we'll see what happens with him. But yeah, I think he'll be good for at least next year if Front Row does in fact exist at the Cup level. And like Tanner had mentioned too, Ford really doesn't have many people because their 2 prospects are moving to Chevrolet, assuming Mayer and Creed stay with Haas. Harrison Burton, we hear rumors, I'm not going to talk about that, but hear rumors that it's probably not going to be him if Gragson gets replaced. Ryan Sieg ain't going anywhere. And then you got to scroll down. Kyle Sieg's definitely not going anywhere. And that's literally it for Xfinity 4 drivers that I just mentioned. Yeah, trucks, unless Wade Riggs really, they want to take a chance on him and Loves wants to take a chance on him. I don't think Chandler Smith is going Cup racing. I think both of them are actually confirmed for next year to be at Front Row, or at least pretty close. So, yeah, Ford and then Majeski, great driver. I think someday he'll move up, but he does a lot of late model stuff still on the side, so I think he likes the Saturdays free. So I think he'd either jump up the Cup or just stay in trucks. Obviously, he's going to be in the 88 truck next season. But, yeah, I think Gragson can kind of breathe a breathe some fresh air, knowing that there's probably no one that would replace him anyway. So that's what I get.
And I feel NASCAR is not at the level yet where we see this in F1 especially, and we're starting to see a little bit in IndyCar where you may have a multi-year deal, but if you really don't perform, you're going to get the boot. I mean, I don't see NASCAR at that point yet, but it's always getting competitive, and you just never know, and the circumstances they're around. Front Row Motorsport will be following it as well. In the chat room, Denver, sharing some news that broke out yesterday. We saw this on Speed Cafe. Jesse Love is going to Adelaide. He'll be racing the Super 2s. For those unfamiliar, Super 2 is one below the Supercar Series. And he also brings up the point, this is a good opportunity for Cup Series Xfinity drivers to improve their skills, even for 3 races. We know the amount of road courses Cup Series have, Xfinity Series has. Truck Series, they still got some road course racing, but even Arca Menards, Lime Rock this year. I think it really shows the value of you have some road course events. You may want to see your Cup Series, Xfinity Series drivers go out internationally. Supercar Series, Super 2, great proving ground. But of course, Jesse Love, he's going to have to get used to driving on the opposite side of the car and shifting with the opposite hand. So that's going to be a lot of fun for him. Of course, one of the drivers Jesse Love was racing against was Austin Hill. Now, when it comes to Austin Hill, he is in the field. He's starting 33rd in the 33 car. I know people have said, like Darrell Waltrip, he started 17th, pit stall 17, 17, won the Daytona 500. I'm highly doubtful 33 is going to result in a win at Talladega. You have 40 cars in this field. Casey Mears, BJ McLeod, during the last row, Anthony Alfredo, starting 38th. And then Austin Hill, as I mentioned, won yesterday. 14 starts, 1 top 10 finish, and that was in Chicago this year. I know, that was surprising when I saw that in Racing Reference. RCR equipment, not exactly where it used to be, especially on the super speedways. Granted, Kyle Busch is starting 3rd. Austin Dillon, 21st. I think a lot of people say, well, that shows what Kyle Busch could bring compared to Austin Dillon. But I have to ask you, Matt, what can we expect from the 3 RCR drivers? As this could potentially be an addition for Austin Hill to make the case for a Cup Series team to look at him for a potential ride.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Austin Hill will leave RCR unless it's like absolutely 100% guaranteed it's going to go well for him. Obviously, 14 career starts, and he does have the 1 top 10. I'm more surprised that Austin Hill's raced that many Cup races in his career so far. That's what threw me off. But then you realize Austin Hill's been around for quite a while, and it's just one of those things too. But I expect them to do pretty good with if you have Austin Dillon and Austin Hill trying to help Kyle Busch out, that would be pretty good because Austin Hill is probably the best or top 3 all-time in the Xfinity Series on super speedways. So for him, if he could even bring a 5th of that talent to the Cup level on a super speedway, he'll be – I'm not going to say he's going to be like Austin Cindric, but I think he'll be pretty good. But for him, I don't know if today's an audition for a Cup ride. I think Austin Hill has a legitimate chance to be someone like a Justin Allgaier if he stays in Xfinity. Obviously, he would be fighting for a championship if the Indianapolis incident didn't happen. He is still fighting for an owner's championship, but I think he's got to figure some of that stuff out. But yeah, I think his teammate Jesse Love is more in line for a Cup ride with RCR. But I think even then, I don't think Jesse Love's going to be with RCR at the Cup level unless Austin Dillon or Kyle Busch leave, which you never know. 2027 RCR could look completely different with 2 new drivers, or it could be the same 2, depending on how it goes out. But I really don't know if I feel like he's in one of those situations where there's not really any more room to grow. And I feel like RCR's kind of been like that for a while in terms of the last at least couple years, besides Reddick pretty much leaving on his own, and then obviously Kyle Busch taking over that ride. But there's really Austin Dillon's been a guaranteed one of those 2 cars literally since we were in since I was in at least high school, even probably before that too. So yeah, I don't know where Austin Hill would even go. That's just what it is. So I think he's better off possibly. I know he's getting older, but going to win, being one of the best Xfinity Series drivers you can be, because he's won not just on super speedways, he's won before. But yeah, definitely not an audition for a Cup team. But I think from the RCR drivers, we can see they're all split up really dramatically in the field. I think Kyle Busch is like third, Austin Dillon's like 21st, and obviously Hill being 33rd. Funny enough, those are all RCR numbers in some way, somehow, being the 3, the 21, and the 33, whether it's Cup or Xfinity. So, hey, maybe there's some good luck there, right? The whole 17-17 thing. But, yeah, sorry for the long point about that. I don't think this is an audition for him, but I do expect that if he can contend up front to push one of his teammates, I think people will look a little nicer at him rather than when you see him in Xfinity. Because he was lower on fuel and he blocked 5 guys behind him that had never won a race. So I think for the fan perspective, you're like, dang, it would have been so awesome for one of those guys who have never won a race in NASCAR. With 2 laps to go, obviously Carson Kvapil too got to the front, and then Allgaier got up there too. Allgaier has won before, but yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I think it'll be interesting. I think that's something to watch, though, is how RCR performs with 3 cars during this YellaWood 500.
Yeah, personally, I think Austin Hill has a very low likelihood of getting a Cup Series deal. I feel like if one was available to him, it would have happened already. In addition to that, I just don't think that his skills on the other kinds of tracks on the NASCAR calendar really lend to his skill set. So with that in mind, he would kind of be like a Michael McDowell SVG type character where he can only truly compete on certain kinds of tracks. And as we noted in the lead up to this segment, he hasn't even truly contended at any of these kinds of tracks in the Cup Series, even though he's got this bevy of success in the Xfinity Series at these kinds of tracks. That brings me to a slightly broader point that Austin Hill started his Xfinity Series career in 2022 with Richard Childress Racing. And if you remember correctly, that was the year that the series expanded to 6 super speedway races a year. Now, if you look back in the past and you look at the other drivers that he competes with for that greatest Xfinity Series Super Speedway driver moniker, you have Tony Stewart, who I believe has 8 wins, and you have Dale Jr., who I believe had 9. It was something like that, so if my numbers are incorrect, I apologize. But with that in mind, you've got to remember that Tony and Dale came up in a time where they only had 3 super speedway opportunities each year to win. They had the Daytona Spring and Daytona Summer races, and they had the Talladega Spring race. The Talladega Fall race was not added to the Xfinity calendar until 2020 when it was added out of necessity because we had to cut a race out of the schedule due to the pandemic and all of that. Now, with that in mind, Austin Hill also came in the year that the new Atlanta repave and reconfiguration took place that made it a super speedway style track. So again, he has had every year 6 opportunities where everybody else used to have 3. So he's kind of stat padding, to be completely frank. And on top of that, at least one of those super speedway races every year, and I think Daytona as well, aren't allowed to have Cup drivers in them, or often don't. So with that in mind, he's facing the easiest possible field in these races with traditionally some of the most overpowered cars. So I really don't think he's, some savant on these kinds of tracks that people make him out to be. So with that in mind, I really just don't think Austin Hill has the chops, the funding, or the really the favorability in the fan base to really warrant moving up to Cup. And I don't think any performance today outside of a win is really going to change anybody's mind.
A win that could change a driver's future so much, and this race I feel it really feeds on the drivers knowing that this is my shot, this is my opportunity to get the win, and they go all out. And sometimes, especially with this race, I feel we have to talk about the potentials of what kind of outcome we're going to get because this is Talladega. I feel it has evolved from we used to just talk about the big one, a big crash of 10 cars or more, but then that was a singular big one. Now, you potentially look at 3 to 4 big crashes per race. The manufacturers, they are taking more steps to organize their drivers to ensure somebody from that group gets the win. Now you add in the playoffs, they're going to want to make sure Kyle Larson, William Byron have that best opportunity to get that win. They're going to work on everyone pitting at the same time. Fuel saving in stage 1, stage 2. It's going to create a visual spectacle of 3 wide, lap after lap after lap. When you look at the lap times, you know they're just sort of riding around coasting. Overtime finishes 5 times since 2020 out of the 11 races, so it could happen. Then we have the controversial finishes that have occurred here and seem to be occurring more often, from overtime, caution during the last lap of overtime when it comes out, the yellow line rule, the out of bound rule, and some people just too many crashes, too destructive of a race. On top of that, this is the first time where it's in the round of 8. So we have fewer playoff drivers. So you don't have 12 playoff drivers coming here going for a win. You only have 8. One of them already has won. You have it, though, when you win, you're in the championship 4. So win here puts you in that Phoenix position. And we don't know what's going to happen in 2026. But if you're a winless driver, a win here can potentially secure you a spot with a team in 2026. So, Tanner, do you agree with the placement of Talladega in the round of 8 instead of the round of 12? Or could this really get out of hand and shine the sport under a poor light?
Well, frankly, Joe, I hate it. I think it is a terrible placement and does a lot of disservice to these drivers and teams that have competed all season for a championship to throw them into Talladega for a chance to go race for a title, which just is so disingenuous. Like, of all tracks to pick on the NASCAR calendar to determine who might run for a championship, you're choosing Talladega. That'd be like choosing the Roval to be in the round of 8. I think it shines a poor light on the sport because I don't think it's a good thing when your track that you brag is mostly a lottery is something that's determining who could be a champion or not. I think its involvement in the playoffs in general is pretty dumb, personally. I think if you were going to have it at all, maybe the round of 16 would be fine. And in fact, I would even be fine if we moved Talladega and the Roval back to that round with the Southern 500. So that way that round has, a bit more zaniness and, could throw like a favorite under the bus or something like that. But frankly, I just want the playoffs to die off at this point as well. So, with all that said, I think that if NASCAR moves to this, 32 race regular season, 4 race final round, Talladega is going to be part of that next year, and I think that would be an atrocity that nobody wants to see. And I just think that, like, this style of racing has no business being in this kind of format. I think that there's just way too much variance, way too much unpredictability, and way too much just out of the driver's hands that they can't control their own destiny. So with that in mind, I hate it. I think that it has no business being in this point of the season, at this point of the schedule, and it would be really nice if they moved it back a significant amount.
Yeah, for me, I'm absolutely not a fan of the placement of this schedule, especially Talladega being very close to the championship 4, round of 8, obviously. But The only thing I like the idea of a super speedway being in the final 10 is it shows that you have pretty much every style of track in the playoffs. But it would be nicer if the playoffs didn't exist. Then maybe have Talladega. But still, I would like it earlier. Maybe round of 12 or round of 16, but definitely not round of 8. That does play into favor for some of the guys who do well on super speedways. But yeah, it's like Tanner said, it's not really a fun thing to have where someone like, say, William Byron again has a bad day here, regular season champion. Now he goes into Martinsville in a must-win, being like 40-something points below the cut line. That's just silly to me. Somebody who's been top 4 all year long. Say Ryan Blaney has a bad day. Another thing, he'd be plus 60-something where he has to go win Martinsville, which I know he can, but it's the principle, right? He would be 3rd or 4th in the regular season standings. If this was a full season points, Larson and Byron, I believe, would be tied right now. So could you imagine the excitement level of if someone like Byron has a bad day or Larson has a bad day with 3 races to go? That would be exciting, but with the playoffs, win and move on, stuff like that, it would be much better if Talladega, the latest this second race is on the Talladega schedule, or in the NASCAR schedule, I should say, should probably be September at the absolute latest. I don't think it needs to be a mid-October near the final rounds of this series. But then again, obviously the schedule's not going to change. Maybe the system will change. I don't know what's going to happen next year. I don't really think many people do. I don't even think NASCAR does. I know there's rumors they'll announce something after it would be November. I'm trying to think of the week, November 2nd. So that following week after the championship week, maybe they throw something out of the blue. I'm sure someone like Bianchi probably already knows, and he's just waiting for after the title to probably release that information, because there are guys who are on the committee like Luck and stuff like that too. So yeah, great reporters though, by the way. I'm just saying they probably waiting a little bit so everyone can find out what's actually going on. But it's exciting if there is change. We just don't know what that change is going to be yet. And yeah, it's kind of silly to have this race this late in the season, especially with win in advance. So hopefully they fix that.
Yeah, I feel this was a move clearly to make it where they know what they were doing, making Martinsville the last chance before Phoenix. Beat him, bang it, push somebody out of the way. Talladega, this is not the kind of track you want to push somebody out of the way. I mean, accidental contact. Eric Almirola had a vicious hit yesterday, walked away. I think at the end of the day, this was clearly for the reins, putting people on the edge of the seat, the excitement, the nerves of, will my driver make it in? Will my driver not make it in? You're going to hear a lot of that on the NBC program today. I think, Tanner, like you said, if it has to be in the playoffs, I sort of like the idea in the round of 16, because round of 16, you sort of have a good idea which 4 are going to be eliminated. Okay, if one of them somehow wins at Talladega, still the top 8, which are probably the most best drivers of the entire season, are still going to be safely in that next round compared to this one. William Byron, another DNF, must-win situation, and he has had a really good year. It's just the way it is. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out in the chat room. I see Denver. I heard a rumor the Chase is returning next year. Well, all the rumors are going around. We'll be following it, and once we get confirmed news, Grid tonight, every Wednesday, we'll be reporting on it. Talladega is too much of a wrecking ball to be in the playoffs. I'd rather have Atlanta instead of Dega. I sort of like that idea. I feel the way Atlanta has been working out, Atlanta could be a good alternative to Talladega.
Me too.
And I'm an anti-Echo Park Atlanta, whatever it's called now. But I think that would be a better idea than having Talladega in there. So I definitely agree with everyone here.
Indeed. With that said, let's go to something we've all been waiting for. Pick a winner. Comment in the chat room. Who do you think is going to win at Talladega Superspeedway? We're getting down to the championship. Matthew still leads. We're going to do the NASCAR Cup Series and also Formula One. They're going to be in COTA today, United States Grand Prix. So NASCAR and Formula One, everyone in the chat room start commenting with who you think is going to win each race. Tanner, I'm starting with you. Who do you see winning the YellaWood 500 at Talladega?
All right, well, I teased it long enough. I think that of all the drivers in the field, all 40 of them, the driver that has the best chance to win today is the one that I feel has been probably the most unlucky in the past, really, 2.5 years. And I think it's the driver behind the 8 ball, Kyle Busch. I think that from that third place starting spot, he's going to have a very good view of the field today and that he won't be behind very many people. And I think that it's time that winless streak finally comes to an end for the 8 team. So I'm going with Kyle Busch this week.
Yep, my father and I family picked and stuff. Told him to pick the guy who I want to pick today, or Kyle Busch. So he took Kyle Busch because my dad's a loyal there. I told him that. I don't know, but I think that's a great pick. I would go with Kyle Busch, but I'm also thinking of a guy who I said last week, a guy who is below the cut line, a guy who has not won here yet in the next gen era, and I'm just confident in him. I think it's going to be a playoff driver that gets it done today. I'm going to go with Mr. 100 overall, Mr. William Byron. I think will be the one to lock himself into the championship for today.
2 great picks. I think I'm going to go with a non-playoff driver to win this race. I'm going to go with the driver that has won here before and wants to get his second win this season. I'm going with Bubba Wallace, 23-11, getting that win. We know he's got it done here before. He's going to try it again. In the chat room, Kathy Dunn is going with Kyle Busch for the win. We know Adam has talked about William Byron. And then Denver, SVG for Dega and Oscar for COTA. So let's switch over to Formula One. Tanner, Circus of the Americas. Max Verstappen on the pole. McLaren, they had a double DNF contact yesterday. They had to work hard on repairing those cars. Who do you see winning the United States Grand Prix at the Circus of the Americas?
I think that Lando Norris is going to get his lick back from last year and beat Max Verstappen head up, and truly is going to try to make a charge for this title against Oscar Piastri, who will be climbing from 6th today due to an unfortunate Turn 1 accident that you alluded to earlier, Joe. I think that Norris is going to make a fight out of this, and if he can't, well, then he might take Verstappen with him today and allow Oscar to pull away even further in the title race.
Okay. I'm going to stick with who I had for the sprint and who I was planning on picking this week regardless. Right there. I think Max Verstappen, just because I think it's from that perspective where it would be so freaking hilarious if he can pull this off. And I think that's kind of another reason too. But then again, like guys like Lando Norris, I think he's got to be in that mindset where either get around Verstappen or take him with you at this point. So, but yeah, I'm going Max Verstappen to win the U.S. Grand Prix. My favorite Grand Prix on the Formula One calendar because I love COTA.
I'm going to also go with Max Verstappen as well, too. I feel Max Verstappen, since Christian Horner has left, that Red Bull team has been turning things around. I think the speed he was showing yesterday, Lando Norris, he's going to need to outduel Max Verstappen to get that win. Can he do it? Maybe, but for pick winner, I'm going with Max Verstappen and closing the gap in more and more on the championship. In the chat room, Adam's going with Max Verstappen as well. Denver, remember, Lando team imposed penalty. I don't anticipate that penalty would impact the race, but you just never know. And of course, Denver had also gone with Oscar for COTA as well. So be a lot of fun. We'll see how much the leaderboard will change this week. And of course, who's left in the Pick a Winner Championship hunt. Friendly reminder, we'll be on the air later tonight following the NASCAR Cup Series race at Talladega, assuming the F1 United States Grand Prix had finished prior to, and for some reason, some crazy race at Coda delays, then we'll be on the air following the Circuits of America race, essentially 90 minutes after the conclusion of the final race of the day. Subscribe to us right here on YouTube so you don't miss our wrap-up show. Hit the bell icon, get notified, and follow us across social media at gridnetworktv.com. We'll also recap Phillips Island MotoGP race, Trackhouse won there, and World Rally Championship, a big win down there. We're going to see who's going to get the championship over in World Rally Championship. For Tanner and Matthew, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the race.